Read by the author. Asked in the abstract, much of the American electorate supports social welfare policies like universal health care, reining in corporate and private wealth, and democratic control that extends from the workplace to the government. But when such programs are framed as socialist, many still turn up their nose in disgust. Socialism remains the big, scary S word, an idea good on paper but bad in practice, as I was taught by high school teachers and college professors. Socialism retains an association with authoritarianism and scarcity buttressed by Cold War propaganda. On the other side of the coin, the negative externalities of capitalism are rarely attributed to their mode of production. Deaths of Capitalism. Countless workers died while building America's capital foundation. They died extracting raw materials like coal and timber. They died manufacturing commodities in factories. They died building bridges and railroads upon which commodities and raw materials travel, and they died while shipping these goods to market. Others were condemned to miserable lives, suffering from horrible working conditions and at risk of debilitating injury. In the mines, workers were exposed to coal dust and acquired black lung. In textile mills, machines claimed fingers and arms. In meat-packing plants, workers' flesh even became part of the product, according to muckraking journalist Upton St. Clair. Many of these risks still exist in the workplace today, or have been exported to workers in the imperial periphery. When trying to fight for better conditions, workers are confronted by the violent repression of the employer and the state. If they are injured, workers lack reliable access to health care. They are either underinsured or experience service delayed by understaffing and unnecessary bureaucratic complexity. Capitalism transforms workers into the mere appendage of a machine built to accumulate profit, precipitating alienation throughout the populace. Bodies inquiring for meaningful stimulation are forced to do dull work. How many people of equal talent to Einstein have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops? Pondered evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould. Deaths from alcohol and suicide attest to our crisis of loneliness. Yet mental illness is frequently stigmatized and criminalized, and access to mental health resources is limited. Under capitalism, products are created for exchange value, often with their use as an afterthought. Many products simply don't work, as consumers are injured by defective and malfunctioning products. Others expel significant externalities not accounted for by the market, but measured in opioid overdoses, traffic fatalities, and tons of carbon dioxide. When the rate of profit cannot be maintained at home, capital goes in search of new markets, and the very nature of capital requires endless expansion. Imperial wars for resources occur among developed nations, while the working class of impoverished nations suffers from the theft of resources, competition from foreign goods, and exploitation and repression by colonizing businessmen and their armies. The invisible hand is stained red with these atrocities, yet too few see capitalism as the root of the problem. These deaths are metabolized by the system, waved away by the ruling class, or calculated as the mere balance of costs and benefits. Capitalism exposes everyone to a warlike competition for superiority where all is justified. Deaths of Socialism. In the Black Book of Communism, all of the deaths occurring in 20th century socialist regimes are laid at the feet of Marx. Filled with hyperbole and distortion, such accounts fail to situate these states in their historical context and ignore the role of Western capitalism itself in achieving such results. Many socialist countries were created in the wake of devastating wars and colonial regimes. The Bolsheviks revolted during a world war that left nearly 3 million Russians dead. Less than a quarter century later, countries forming the Soviet Union suffered another 26 million deaths. Vietnam suffered under French colonial rule and Japanese occupation prior to the uprising of the Viet Minh. Cuba, China, and others fit similar patterns. As a result of this destruction, and their underdevelopment by extractive imperial regimes, socialist states were formed with inadequate means of production. Contrary to popular belief, Marx appreciated capital's capacity for developing the means of production. The problem, however, is the direction of such development for profit rather than human need. These developing countries lacked the material basis for socialism. Where they did succeed, socialist states were obstructed by coordinated Western oppression, seeking to deny any challenges to the hegemony of capitalism. These states were targeted with blockades, sanctions, and monetary entanglements that devastated their economies. Propaganda blaming socialism fanned the flames of coups, backed by intelligence agencies and corporate moral support. To ward off land reform, the United Fruit Company lobbied U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles to manufacture the 1954 coup in Guatemala. The CIA helped to overthrow Salvador Allende's socialist government in Chile in 1973. Countless examples abound. Despite these challenges, socialist states made impressive achievements in areas of education, housing, healthcare, and production capacity. Cuba achieved near total literacy within years of the revolution, and now exports doctors worldwide. The Soviet Union rapidly industrialized, increasing steel production by as much as 400% during the first and second 5-year plans. China's economy is currently performing similar feats. These achievements and the violence of capitalism do not excuse all the actions of these regimes. We can and should criticize Stalin's senseless purges, the repression of Mao's Cultural Revolution, and genocide by the Khmer Rouge, all performed in the name of nominal socialism. These are not events to be ignored or defended, but a warning against the sacrifice of our ideals. Real socialism. We are not confined to the socialism of the past. The socialism of DSA is being constructed in a new historical context. As an organization that centers democratic practice, we have the opportunity to construct socialism as we see fit. It is up to us to make democracy accessible to all and to prioritize freedom from want and oppression. The arrival of socialism signals an end to imperialist wars and deaths of necessity. It means a rise in workplace safety and quality of life. It is an opportunity to address social issues that are ignored by private capital. History is not static. Capitalism is not sustainable, and its horrors demand a response. The important thing is that we define the response, rather than a ruling class that will only relinquish power upon the final destruction of the world. Reactionaries use fear of change to discourage challenges to existing hierarchy. They warn of perverse consequences from the fight for justice. Such fear-mongering is counter-revolutionary. The socialist movement thrives from hope informed by action. The working class must reclaim the world we have built.